She hasn't said anything. Maybe she wouldn't know where to start. Maybe she tried once, tentatively, carefully, and the conversation went nowhere. Maybe she decided it was easier to stay quiet than to risk saying something that might land the wrong way. But there are things your partner has been wanting you to know about what she needs, about what has changed, about what she wishes were different between you. Not because she loves you less, not because the relationship has failed, but because her body has changed, her needs have shifted, and no one has ever given either of you the language to talk about it. She hasn't been able to tell you. Today, I'm going to. My name is Dr. Julia Rhodes. I'm a certified men's sex therapist with over a decade of clinical experience working exclusively with male sexual health and intimate relationships. Over the course of my career, I have sat with thousands of men and thousands of couples, navigating exactly the kind of quiet distance that builds when two people who love each other stop knowing how to reach each other in the bedroom. What I do on this channel is simple. I bring the conversations that aren't happening in consulting rooms, in bedrooms, at kitchen tables, into the open. Because the men I work with don't lack love for their partners, they lack information. And today's video is about giving you the information that changes everything. This is not a video about blame. It is not a video about what you have been doing wrong. It is a video about what becomes possible when you finally understand what she needs and how to give it to her. Before we go any further, if you are a man over 60 who wants to show up better for his partner, build deeper intimacy, and understand the science behind what women actually need after 50, please subscribe to this channel right now. Every week, I bring you honest, research-backed, clinically grounded conversations about men's sexual health and relationships. No embarrassment, no oversimplification, just real information for real men in real relationships. Hit subscribe. And let's get into this. What has changed for her, and why it matters to you? Let me start with something that is almost never explained to men, and yet is absolutely foundational to everything else we are going to discuss today. Her body has changed. Not in a way that diminishes her, not in a way that should reduce desire or closeness or the quality of your intimate life together, but in a way that is real, significant, and almost completely misunderstood by the men who love these women most. After 50, and particularly through and beyond menopause, women experience a significant shift in their hormonal landscape. Estrogen and progesterone, the two hormones that have governed female reproductive and sexual physiology for decades, decline substantially. And that decline has a direct, measurable impact on the experience of intimacy. Here is what that looks like in practice. The tissue of the vaginal walls becomes thinner and less elastic. Natural lubrication decreases and takes longer to develop when it does. The sensitivity of the genitals changes, not disappearing, but shifting in how it responds, what pressure it welcomes, and what pace it requires. The arousal process, which was never as linear or rapid as it is in men, becomes even more gradual, even more dependent on the right conditions, the right emotional context, and the right quality of attention. Now, I want to be very clear about what this does not mean. It does not mean she wants less intimacy. It does not mean her desire has gone. It does not mean the closeness you once had is no longer available to you. What it means, and this is perhaps the most important sentence in this entire video, is that she needs a different quality of approach, slower, more intentional, more attuned to where she actually is rather than where you assume she should be. Many men in long-term relationships make a painful mistake at this stage, and they make it entirely without malice. They interpret the changes in her body as signals of disinterest. When lubrication takes longer, they read it as reluctance. When arousal requires more time, they read it as rejection. And so they pull back. They approach less often. They initiate with less confidence. And she, sensing that withdrawal, pulls back too, and the distance grows. Not because either of you stopped caring, but because neither of you had the biological and clinical framework to understand what was actually happening. You have that framework now, and everything that follows builds on it. Now, before I proceed, I want to pause for just a moment, because if what I've shared so far is already starting to connect dots for you, if you're beginning to understand why certain experiences in the bedroom have played out the way they have, I want you to know that. There is a complete guide available that takes everything I teach on this channel and builds it into a single structured roadmap. The complete guide pieces the entire puzzle of men's sexual health together, from fixing erection and performance issues at the foundation to the specific techniques that make a man genuinely exceptional in bed after 60, to how to bring your partner to the same level of desire and engagement as you, so that the connection between you is firing on every cylinder, not just some of them. It is not a collection of tips. It is a handheld, beginning-to-end journey through everything a man over 60 needs to know to perform with confidence, connect with depth, and enjoy his sex life the way he deserves to. I made a full video walking through exactly what the program covers and who it is for. The link is pinned in the comment section and sitting in the video description right now. Go and watch it after this video. I think it is going to land with you in a significant way. Now, let's continue. What she actually wants, and it is not what you think. Let me address the assumption that sits at the center of most men's approach to their partner's sexual satisfaction. The assumption that what she wants, what will make her feel genuinely satisfied, is primarily about physical technique, about performance, about what you do and how long you do it. The research is unambiguous on this point. It is not. Studies published in the Journal of Sex Research and the Archives of Sexual Behavior consistently show that for women over 50, emotional safety and relational closeness are not merely psychological preferences layered on top of a physical experience. They are physiological prerequisites for arousal itself. Let me say that again because it matters enormously. Emotional connection is not the context for sex. For women over 50, emotional connection is a biological requirement for sex. The brain-body connection in female sexuality is such that when emotional safety is absent, when a woman does not feel genuinely seen, valued, and close to her partner, her body's arousal response is physically suppressed. Not chosen, not decided, suppressed at a neurological level. This means that no technique in the world, no matter how skilled, can compensate for emotional disconnection. A woman who feels unseen by her partner will struggle to become physically aroused by him. Full stop. But here is the other side of that finding, and it is genuinely exciting. A man who shows up with emotional presence, with genuine attentiveness, with the clear and unmistakable signal that he sees her and wants her specifically, not just sex, but her, activates her arousal system in a way that no technique can manufacture. Research from the Kinsey Institute and qualitative studies on midlife female sexuality reveal this consistently. The single most powerful driver of arousal and satisfaction for women over 50 is feeling genuinely desired, not accommodated, not serviced, desired. The distinction between a partner who wants sex and a partner who specifically, unmistakably wants her, that distinction lives in her body. She feels it. And it makes all the difference. What does this look like practically? It looks like attention that doesn't begin and end in the bedroom. It looks like physical affection that isn't always goal-oriented. It looks like looking at her, really looking, and letting her see that you do. It looks like slowing down enough that she can feel you are present with her, not simply moving through a sequence toward an outcome. It looks like being there, fully, unhurriedly, for her. Confidence and presence, the research is clear on this too, are consistently rated by women as more arousing and more satisfying than technical proficiency in a partner who is emotionally absent. A man who is calm, unhurried, and genuinely attentive is a more satisfying partner than one who is technically accomplished but mentally elsewhere. You don't need to perform, you need to arrive. The clitoral truth: most men were never taught. I want to spend some time in this section on anatomy, because what most men were taught about female anatomy is, at best, incomplete. And the gap between what men assume and what the research has actually established is costing women their satisfaction in ways that could so easily be remedied. The work of Dr. Helen O'Connell, an Australian urologist whose landmark research in the late 1990s and early 2000s used MRI imaging to fully map the clitoral structure for the first time, fundamentally changed what we know about female sexual anatomy. What she found was this: the clitoris is not the small external button that most people, men and women alike, were shown in basic biology education. It is a complex, wishbone-shaped internal structure that extends several inches inside the body, with bulbs and crura that surround the vaginal canal on both sides. The external portion, the glans, is merely the visible tip of a much larger anatomical structure. Why does this matter for you? Because it means that female pleasure has a far richer and more nuanced anatomical basis than most men have ever been taught to appreciate. And because understanding it, even at a basic level, changes how you approach your partner's body, with more curiosity, more attentiveness, less assumption. Now let me give you the clinical statistic that I want every man watching this to carry with him. Research consistently shows that over 70% of women require direct clitoral stimulation to reach orgasm. Penetrative sex alone, without any additional clitoral attention, is sufficient for a minority of women. For the majority, it is not. This is not a criticism of penetrative sex. It is a clinical reality that most men were simply never told. And for women over 50, this reality becomes even more pronounced. Postmenopausal hormonal changes mean that the clitoral tissue, like vaginal tissue, may require a different quality of stimulation than it once did. Softer pressure, slower pace, more consistent rhythm rather than escalating intensity. Patience, genuine, unhurried patience, becomes not just a virtue, but a practical clinical requirement for her satisfaction. The men who understand this, who approach their partner's body with curiosity rather than assumption, with patience rather than urgency, are the men whose partners feel genuinely, consistently satisfied. And those men are not necessarily more experienced or more gifted. They are simply better informed. Foreplay is not the warm-up. It is the whole game. I want to address one of the most pervasive and most damaging assumptions in male sexual behavior, and I want to address it directly because it is at the root of an enormous amount of female dissatisfaction in long-term relationships. The assumption is this: that foreplay is a preliminary step, a warm-up act before the main event, something you move through in order to get to where you are actually going. This assumption is wrong. Clinically, physiologically, and relationally wrong. Dr. Emily Nagoski, one of the world's leading researchers in female sexuality and author of the landmark book Come As You Are, has documented extensively that women's arousal systems operate on a fundamentally different timeline and architecture than men's. The male arousal system, broadly speaking, tends towards spontaneity and rapid escalation. The female arousal system tends toward responsiveness, building gradually in the presence of the right conditions, the right emotional context, and crucially, the right amount of time. For women over 50, given the hormonal changes we discussed earlier, this timeline extends further. The body requires more time to vasodilate, more time for lubrication to develop, more time for the nervous system to shift from the demands of daily life into a state of genuine physical receptivity. Rushing this process, approaching it as something to move through rather than something to inhabit, does not just reduce her physical satisfaction. It signals at an emotional level that her experience is secondary, that what matters is the destination, not the journey. And for women whose arousal is so deeply tied to emotional safety and feeling genuinely wanted, that signal shuts things down. Not dramatically, not with an argument, just quietly, in the way that a flower closes when the conditions aren't right. So what does getting this right actually look like? It looks like extended physical connection that has no agenda, touch that is curious and attentive, not transactional. It looks like taking the time to be present with her body, not performing a sequence, but genuinely exploring, responding, adjusting. It looks like asking, not with clinical detachment, but with warm, genuine curiosity, what feels good, what she wants more of, what she wants less of. It looks like making the journey the point. Because for women over 50, and frankly for most women at any age, the journey is the point. The closeness, the attentiveness, the unhurried presence of a partner who is in no rush to arrive anywhere because he is exactly where he wants to be. That experience, being on the receiving end of that quality of attention, is what women in my clinical practice describe over and over again as the most deeply satisfying sexual experience they can imagine with a long-term partner. It costs nothing. It requires no special skill. It requires only the willingness to slow down and the understanding of why slowing down matters so much. The conversation she's been waiting for. Here is a finding from the research that I want you to sit with for a moment. Studies consistently show that women over 50 want more open, honest communication about sex than they are currently receiving from their partners. Not occasionally, consistently, across study after study, in relationship after relationship, women in long-term partnerships report never having had a direct, genuine conversation about what they actually enjoy, what has changed in their bodies, and what they wish their partner would do differently. Never. Not in relationships of 10 years, not in relationships of 30 years. The conversation simply hasn't happened, and the consequence of that silence is enormous. Because the research is equally clear on the other side of this finding. Couples who communicate openly about sex report significantly higher levels of sexual satisfaction, emotional closeness, and relationship quality overall. And that gap between communicating couples and non-communicating couples widens with age. The conversation matters more after 50, not less. So why hasn't it happened? For most couples, it comes down to two things. First, the absence of a shared language and framework, which is exactly what this video is beginning to build for you. And second, a fear on both sides that raising the subject implies criticism, implies something is wrong, implies a level of dissatisfaction that feels dangerous to name. I want to give you a reframe. Opening this conversation is not an act of criticism. It is an act of intimacy. It is saying, I want to know you better. I want to understand what you need. I want what happens between us to be genuinely good for you, not just good enough. That is not a threatening message. That is one of the most loving things one partner can say to another. Here is how to begin. not in the bedroom, not immediately before or after sex, when emotional stakes are at their highest and defenses are most easily triggered. Begin the conversation in a neutral, calm, connected moment. A walk, a quiet evening at home, somewhere that feels safe and unhurried. And begin not with what is wrong, but with genuine curiosity. Something as simple as, I've been thinking about us, and I want to make sure I'm really giving you what you need. Is there anything you've been wanting that we haven't talked about? Then, and this is the part most men find hardest, listen. Not to respond, not to defend or explain, simply to hear her. To let what she says land fully before you do anything with it. What she tells you in that conversation is the most valuable sexual information you will ever receive. More valuable than any technique. More valuable than anything I can tell you from the outside. Because it comes from her, the specific, individual, irreplaceable woman you are with. And the act of asking, of showing her that you want to know, is itself one of the most powerful things you can do for your intimate life together. Bridging the desire gap, understanding responsive desire. There is one more piece of research I want to share with you, and in my clinical experience, this is the finding that lands with the most relief for the men who hear it. One of the most common challenges in long-term relationships after 50 is what researchers call desire discrepancy. The experience of one partner feeling ready for intimacy, while the other doesn't seem to feel that same pull. It is one of the most cited sources of sexual frustration in long-term relationships, and for men who initiate more frequently, it can become a source of quiet rejection that erodes confidence and closeness over time. Here is what most men don't know. The desire discrepancy they are experiencing is very often not what it appears to be. Dr. Emily Nagoski's research and a growing body of clinical literature on female desire has established a distinction that changes everything once you understand it. The distinction between spontaneous desire and responsive desire. Spontaneous desire is what most men experience most of the time. It arises seemingly from nowhere, not necessarily in response to anything external. You simply feel it. It is there. That is the model of desire that our culture treats as universal, as normal, as the standard against which all other experience is measured. But it is not universal. For a significant proportion of women, and this proportion increases after menopause, desire is primarily responsive. It does not arise spontaneously. It arises in response to the right context, the right emotional connection, the right quality of physical attention. It arises, in other words, as a response to something that is already happening, not as a driver toward it. What this means practically is enormous. It means that when your partner doesn't initiate, when she doesn't seem to feel the pull of desire before intimacy begins, that is not necessarily a sign that she doesn't want to be close to you. It may simply be a sign that her desire is responsive rather than spontaneous, that it needs to be drawn out by the right conditions rather than existing independently of them. It means the question is not, why doesn't she want sex? The question is, what conditions allow her desire to emerge? And that is a question you can actually answer, because you have spent this entire video building the framework to answer it. Emotional safety, genuine attentiveness, unhurried presence, extended, non-goal-oriented physical connection. The knowledge that you are there for her specifically, not for an outcome. These are the conditions in which responsive desire flourishes. And a man who understands this, who creates these conditions consistently and without expectation, will find that the desire gap he thought was unbridgeable begins gradually and genuinely to to close. Now, I want to take a moment here because what I have shared with you today is one crucial piece of a much larger picture. Understanding what your partner needs is foundational. But for many men over 60, there is more going on than simply needing a new approach to intimacy. There are questions about erection and performance that haven't been answered. There are techniques and approaches that nobody has ever walked you through, specifically for men in this stage of life. There is the challenge of aligning your desire levels with your partner's in a way that feels natural and sustainable rather than forced or negotiated. These are not small questions, and they deserve complete answers. That is exactly why I put together something that I believe is the most comprehensive resource I have ever created for men over 60 who want to reclaim their full sexual confidence and their intimate relationship. I made a dedicated video about it, and I want you to watch it. It pieces the entire puzzle together, from fixing erection and performance issues at the root level to the specific techniques that make a man genuinely exceptional in bed after 60, to the exact approach that brings your partner's desire into alignment with yours. Every piece connected, every step guided, from beginning to end. Like someone who has walked this road with hundreds of men taking you by the hand and showing you every turn. The link to that video is pinned in the comment section right now. It is also in the video description below. I want you to go and watch it after this video. Not because what we covered today isn't valuable, it is, but because what is waiting for you in that video takes everything you have learned here and gives you the complete roadmap, the whole picture, nothing left out. Go and find it. It is pinned in the comments and it is in the description below. What you find there could genuinely change the trajectory of your intimate life and your relationship. If this video gave you something today, a new perspective, a moment of recognition, a first step toward a conversation that is long overdue, please share it. Share it with a friend, a brother, a man in your life who is navigating the same quiet distance in his relationship and doesn't know why. Leave me a comment below. Tell me what landed for you. Tell me what question this raised that you want me to answer next. I read every comment on this channel, and this community shapes every video I make. Subscribe if you haven't already, and please go and find that pinned video in the comments and in the description below. What is waiting for you there is the complete picture, and you deserve the complete picture. You are not alone in this, and the relationship you want is closer than you think. I'm Dr. Julia Rhodes. I'll see you in the next one.